Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Frogs Insider podcast. It has been a long time since we've gotten to do one of these, but I am so excited to be back on our Behind Enemy Lines series, interviewing an expert on the Stanford Cardinal, Ben Parker of Rivals.com, covering Stanford athletics. And he is here with us to preview game one of the season, a game that feels like it's been on the schedule for forever, and we are finally just getting to play it. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Very happy to be on the show.
Hey, well, we are super excited to get to talk to you. This game, this home and home of all eternity, it feels like these two teams have played quite a bit for teams that don't have any type of traditional rivalry. But we saw this game canceled during COVID, get rescheduled. TCU will be traveling out to Palo Alto for a Friday night. We know that the students won't be on campus yet. School has not started, and we know it's a Friday night in the Bay Area. Do you have any idea what the campus environment, what the game day environment will be in that beautiful stadium?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think everything else is going to be normal, except I don't think we're going to see as many students for the reasons you said. They're on the quarter system there. They don't start school till the 20th. So probably a little bit lighter student attendance. But aside from that, it should be a regular, normal kind of after night game. I do know they're running a promotional for the school district, Palo Alto Unified School District. They're giving out complimentary tickets to teachers. So that's kind of one kind of unique kind of feature they're doing. But aside from that, it's just a regular Friday night opener at Stanford.
And I don't think when I think of Stanford, I think of a super raucous environment, but that is a good thing. This is definitely a wine and cheese and chandelier at the tailgate crowd, but it's still a really good game day atmosphere. Plus, you get the beauty of that stadium. The sun should be setting right around kickoff. So it should be a great experience for those that haven't been there yet. We talk about the actual football being played. Stanford returns as much production as just about anyone in the country. I think they're in the top five, maybe top three overall. That could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. This was obviously a team that was disappointed in last season's results, as was TCU. But they bring a lot of those guys back, and Troy Taylor's now in his second year running that program. What do you think is the biggest difference between year one and year two? Not for how this team is going to play, but for how Troy Taylor is really running the program and putting his stamp on Stanford football.
I think the biggest difference is one thing he keeps hammering home is the depth. So it's a deeper team. And I think there's a lot more confidence in the personnel that he has this year with returning guys and some guys they've added to just do more of the offensive stuff he wanted to do. I think there was times last year where he felt like he couldn't fully implement the type of system or schemes he was looking to do. And this year, there's a lot more confidence in his ability to kind of run the plays that he wanted to do in the system he wants to do. So I just think this year we're going to see, in terms of the types of plays they run, play calling, all that kind of stuff, it's going to be a lot more in line with what he uh, hopes to do going forward. And he said that today as well. So,
I think I told you before we started, and everyone that listens to the show knows I'm from Sacramento, and Troy Taylor obviously spent a good chunk of time at Sac State, and so I'm pretty familiar with the way that he runs, especially on the offensive side of the ball. He's known for being dynamic and innovative, and running these programs. Sac State really overachieved to some degree in his early years and became a pretty powerhouse program in the FCS level. How has his innovation translated to Stanford? And kind of a second part of that question is, with the limitations of what Stanford is able to do recruiting wise, you talked about him wanting to get the types of players. Is he limited in being able to do that? Or do you think that they're giving him some flexibility and some opportunity to use the transfer portal and NIL that didn't necessarily exist under David Shaw?
yeah. So first of all, just in terms of kind of in terms of doing what he wants to do, I do think once again we're going to see more of what he wants to do. Last year, there was a few stuff he did where you kind of got a flash of like, okay, this is what we're going to see more of. But this year we see a lot more of that, of terms of the types of play calling that he wants to do. As far as just him getting the guys he needs, yeah, I mean Stanford they've been opening up the transfer portal. Not to the same degree that other schools are, but every year there's at least 4 or 5 kind of key transfers they're bringing in. They got a really key transfer from Washington and safety Jay Green, Clay Patterson, a defensive lineman from Yale who led Yale, I think, second all time in sacks, who's here. Josiah Galvin, a really talented inside linebacker from Northern Iowa who racked up a ton of tackles there. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like transfer portal stuff, that's opening up a lot more than it was. I think Stanford recognizes they need to be able to do that. And I think that they're most, as an athletic department, they're most willing to be most flexible with the football team just because that's the big money maker. That's the most important team on campus. So the athletic department is most willing to, I mean, they're trying to help everybody out, but football is the priority for sure. And then as far as NIL, kind of same thing. The collective is picking up steam. It's getting better. I've been told it's kind of like mid tier the ACC for
Okay.
football. So it's not the best, but it's like not the worst either. But there's depending on who you talk to, some people will say it's lower or higher, but like they're getting things going NIL wise to football. And so it's been a little bit of a slow process because like earlier this year, the athletic director Bernard Muir finally acknowledged the collective, which was a little weird because we had known about it for like over a year. So it's kind of like, dude, like why don't you just acknowledge this like
Yeah.
right when it came out? Um, but no, I mean they're definitely warming up more and more to NIL and transfer portal stuff, and also another big thing has been the early enrollees. They're getting a lot more guys coming in early as freshmen that are kind of come in an extra, kind of 2 quarters in advance. Um, so there's definitely things they're doing and loosening up that weren't available to Shaw when he was here.
It used to be that the carrot of a Stanford education was enough to get people to choose Stanford, but we saw this summer with Kennedy transferring, that no longer matters if you can drop a bag in somebody's lap to the tune of $1 million
Right.
plus dollars, right? But there is still something to be said, and I think because of that education, this might be unfair to stereotype, but Stanford has always been able to recruit the offensive line really, really well. And anybody that knows football knows generally the offensive linemen are the smartest players on the field. How does this offensive line look? What's the depth like at that? And what is your expectation for their play as a unit on Friday night?
They ought to be better because like everyone's back. So I mean,
Yes.
so it's kind of like, okay, like you guys should be better because you guys are all back. Uh, Levi Rogers, fifth-year center, anchoring the unit. Connor McLaughlin, fifth-year right tackle, anchoring that unit as well. And then inside Simeon Powell is a guard, and actually who else the opposite left tackle? I'm blanking, but like it's a collective of the unit should be stronger. Jack Lehrer in there too. So it's a unit where I think they certainly feel like after having kind of gone through the fire of last year that they should be a lot better. So it's like everyone's back, everyone's supposed to be stronger, everyone's more cohesive. They have a better feel of the system. So um, that's a really key unit for them, as it is for all teams. And they definitely like ought to look better. But it's one of these situations where we'll find out kind of Friday night like how much better they've actually gotten. But they ought to be better, you know.
You mentioned that I'm assuming you were at the press conference today. It seems like you talk about we'll find out Friday night. Do we know who Stanford will be starting at quarterback? I know there's been some potential that it could be any one of three guys. Do you have an expectation, or have they named a starter officially at this point? And what do you know about who will be taking snaps for the Cardinal?
Yeah, they haven't named a starter. So Troy Taylor was kind of coy when asked about that today. He was like, "Yeah, it could be any of three guys. It could be Ashton Daniels, Justin Lamson, or Elijah Brown." I'll say this: I would be very surprised if Ashton Daniels is not the starter. He was the guy that came with the team to ACC media days.
Mhm.
So that kind of was a bit of a signal, I feel like. And from what I've observed in practice, what I've been able to see, he's been getting all of the QB1 reps with the first team. So I think it's gonna be a situation where I think we're gonna see Ashton Daniels be the starting quarterback. I think we'll see Justin Lamson come in some, and then who knows? Maybe he throws in Elijah Brown for some situations, but I think it's gonna be mostly Ashton and Lamson, and then maybe he peppers in Elijah Brown a little bit. Maybe, but I would be very surprised if Ashton Daniels is not given the QB1 role, particularly since it's week one. He's a junior, all that.
They have some talented guys to throw to. I think everybody that likes college football has heard of Alec Aomen. I'm going to butcher his last name, Aomenor, but Tiger Bachmeyer had a pretty good season. Tight end position seems like it's going to be pretty deep for that unit as well. Maybe some questions at running back and a little bit more of an unknown quantity compared to what we've seen in the Stanford backfield the last several years. How do you think the skill positions stack up just across kind of the power four of college football?
I think they stack up well. I think wide receiver is the deepest unit on the entire team. Alec, as you mentioned, is kind of the star of of the team, really. He's incredibly, you know, uh, Yeah, just I'm kind of blanking, but really a vertical threat. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy can just run for days, right? And he's just incredibly fast and is such a threat with the deep ball. And you saw what he did against
Yeah.
Colorado and Travis Hunter. I mean, he just kind of took his lunch money from him
And we saw
multiple
what
times.
Travis Hunter did against TCU in game one. And so to see Alec go out and just dominate him like that, especially
Yeah,
on that catch that we've seen a million times, was really incredible. Okay, so we got phone overheating in the Bay Area for you in the middle of your dissertation on the Stanford wide receivers. You had mentioned that they're the deepest unit on the potentially on the team, definitely the offensive side of the ball. We all know about Alec. Tell us a little bit more about the rest of that group.
Yeah, so Tiger Bachmeier is obviously really talented as well. And he's coming up, both I was saying both him and Alec both had off-season surgeries to address, but they're both looking healthy now. Bachmeier in particular is looking a lot better. So that's good. But yeah, Bachmeier is an absolute stud, and kind of the number 2 receiver in the room. And then after that, there's a lot of really talented, deep, versatile guys that they can kind of go to. Guys like Jason Rains, Moody Rubin is really good. Trying to think who else. Ismail Cisse, the Farrell brothers, both Bryce and his younger brother Chase. I mean, there's just a lot of guys at that position. So there's a lot of versatility there. And I think they have a nice kind of blend of like options they want to go to for speed, guys they can go to in short yardage situations. So it's just a very deep, versatile room with Alec and Tiger obviously atop the list.
I mean, I really, really hate hearing that, being that TCU's probably biggest area of weakness right now is at cornerback. So that's going to be an interesting matchup Friday night that could very obviously, kind of control the nature of the game. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Stanford, under Shaw, under Harbaugh previously, was always a really sturdy defensive unit, generally one of the top in the conference. How does this defense stack up? What do you expect their strengths to be?
I think the linebackers are definitely supposed to be a real strength. Like a middle linebacker, they got Gaithan Bernadette and Tristan Sinclair inside. Both those guys are really are kind of the anchors of that unit. Obviously outside linebacker, David Bailey is a real star. He's coming off kind of a sophomore slump. Kind of his main thing is he needs to just work on his effort and like energy and hustle. He admitted that to me, which is interesting to admit that. But he's got a lot of talent and potential, so he's really good. And then they have 2 really good corners on the outside in Zara Manley and Colin Wright. So I would say like the corners and the inside linebackers. But then at safety, they got some good guys as well. Mitch Lieber and Scotty Edwards and Jay Green, who was a transfer from Washington. I mentioned earlier, like he's a guy who I've been hearing really good things about. So kind of similar to the offensive situation where everyone says they're feeling more comfortable in Bobby April's system. And so they obviously got to go out and prove that. But it's a fairly like well-rounded defense. I think the biggest question mark is the defensive line up front. Like that's kind of the one unit of question. And Clay Patterson from Yale is supposed to be a major guy to address that. Tobin Phillips inside's another key guy, but I think that the real kind of question is like, what's the pass rush going to be like? What's the defensive line going to be like? And how well can they stop the run? Because that was something that was really lagging in the Shaw years towards the end.
Yeah. I think TCU's run game, we've been pleasantly surprised during camp, but Cam Cook will be the starter, and this will be his first year as a major, major guy in the backfield. TCU's offensive line has struggled in pass protection at the early parts of camp. So it'll be interesting to see both of those 2 units having questions. Who's going to come out of that feeling better about themselves after week 1? I normally don't spend a lot of time on special teams, but Jet Toner was such a special kicker for Stanford and seemed to be such a clutch guy. They're replacing him. They lose him. The spread on this has gotten up to as many as 10.5. I feel like it's going to be a much closer game. How confident do you think the Stanford program is in special teams when it comes to the place kicking and both the field position game with the punting unit?
Yeah, I think they're feeling good about it. Josh Carty last year was such an amazing kicker for them.
It was
phenomenal.
Carty. You're right. I'm sorry. Jet Toner
yeah.
was like way back a couple of years.
It's all good. It's all good.
Carty, yeah.
Carty was drafted by the Rams, but he was phenomenal. But the guy they have kicking now, Emmett Kenny, he seems to feel confident. And then the punter they have, Aiden Flintoff, was like one of the top kind of punting kind of talents in the country. When he came out of high school, he's a sophomore now. So I think that there's a lot of confidence in that group, but it's one of those where they don't know what they have until they actually see them in games, kicking.
So this is a week one, and it's always so hard to predict how week one games go. It looks like that spread, like I said, was at one point it was 10.5. It looks like it's at 8 now. Do you think that that's too many points? Do you think Stanford is going to surprise some people? Are they underrated? Are they properly rated? Do you think they're going to? I mean, I don't know what to think of TCU at this point, so it's really hard to say who's kind of got the advantage here. But overall, do you think that this is going to be a closer game than what the Sharps have it at?
Yeah, you said the spread is at what line?
8 now. It's going to come down to 8.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like not a bad spread. Like I could buy that spread. I mean, I could see Stanford making it closer. I could see Stanford winning this game. I mean, it's sort of hard with week one games because both teams are coming in so fired up and excited, right? And so I think this is a game that Stanford absolutely could win. It's just really going to come down to, how are they, have they actually improved from what they were last year on both sides of the ball? And I think also kind of quarterback play, how does that sort itself out? And then the other kind of unit too is the running backs. Got some talented freshman running backs, and we got to see what those guys can bring. So there's some kind of key guys that could end up having a real impact on the game. But it's kind of hard to know until we actually see them against somebody else before we can really make a judgment on that. But yeah, I feel like I feel like that spread is certainly fair considering what Stanford's coming off of. But if you're Stanford, obviously you got to feel confident. You're at home. It's Friday Night Lights. You're fired up. Uh, year one of the ACC era. So this is a game where I could see any number of different outcomes of this one. I think it's honestly kind of a toss up.
So last question about this game specifically, and then I want to ask you a little bit of an ACC question. But if Stanford wins, what has gone right for this team Friday night?
Yeah, I would say if Stanford wins tonight, probably the biggest thing is that they won the turnover battle.
Mhm.
Like I think that's really gonna be a key. It's always a key for every game, but like Ashton Daniels at times like made some kind of questionable throws and turned the ball over. So I think and then also to the defense, they didn't force as many turnovers as they wanted to. So I think if you're kind of looking for a key to the game, I think like winning that turnover battle is going to be really key. So if Stanford takes good care of the ball Friday night, and if some guys in the defense are able to force a turnover, whether it be fumble or interception, I would if they win, I would guess that'd be part of that formula.
If Stanford doesn't win, is it as simple as losing the turnover battle, or do you think there's something else that could be at play there?
I think if they lose the game, I mean, if they lose it depends like how badly they lose. If they lose, right? But I would say that would be part of it. Once again, I think if they lose, I would say that there was probably some turnovers they wish they could have back. And then also too, just like maybe the offensive line not being as improved as we thought as we thought it was, or maybe some freshman nerves, some freshman jitters. So there could be a little bit of youth and inexperience factor too as well if they don't win.
And then who are your predictions for week one, Stanford offensive and defensive MVP?
For offensive MVP, I'm gonna say I'll say Tiger Bachmeier. I'll kind of show him some love. I'll say Tiger Bachmeier is your offensive MVP. And then for defensive MVP, I'll go out and say Colin Wright. Maybe he gets an INT or something. I don't
Okay.
know. So those two
Perfect.
guys, yeah.
I like it. And then last question, obviously I think that college football fans that get it are super disappointed and heartbroken over the collapse of the Pac 12, 10, whatever it was, 16. But Stanford gets thrown a little bit of a life raft with the ACC. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty, but to me, the bigger question isn't the future of the ACC. It's how is that type of travel going to impact Stanford's athletic department, not just from a budgeting perspective, but from a competitiveness perspective, when you consider just kind of the weight that travel can take on student athletes, especially with the academic requirements at Stanford. How do you think the early returns are? Do you think it's going to be an issue, or will Stanford be able to be a school that dominates, not necessarily, the bigger name programs, but is in the running for the Directors Cup every year?
Yeah, from what I've seen with the schedules, it's not been as bad as I thought. I think that they've found ways to, from what I'm looking at the schedule, it's never more than two straight ACC games at a time. And I just kind of looking at the schedules for soccer and volleyball as an example, because they play more. Football is actually really chill this year
Yeah.
because 8 of the 12 games are in the Bay Area. So that's really
Yeah.
nice. But no, I've kind of looked at it. It seems pretty manageable. I think they've done a good job of like balancing things out. And so yeah, it's not ideal. I think they would obviously wish they're playing other West Coast teams more often, but one thing they can do is offset that with more localized non-conference opponents, right? So basketball, I don't think leaves the men's basketball team. Their schedule just got released, non-conference. They don't leave the state of California during non-conference play. So I think that like what you're going to see is just more kind of like localized non-conference games, less travel during the non-conference. And so I think when you average it all out, it will be more travel, but it also will be manageable.
Okay. And most important question in regards to the ACC, have you had the chance to get annoyed by SMU fans yet? Have you discovered that they are the worst?
You know, I haven't yet. So
Surely,
I haven't.
surely, Ben.
Yeah, I haven't, but I'll take your word for it.
It's coming. I promise you that. Just you wait. Where can people find your work and follow you on social media?
Yeah, just go to cardinalsportsreport.com. That's the Stanford Rivals site. You could also do stanford.rivals.com. And then my handle on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, it's and YouTube, it's at slamdunk406. And then there's also a site account for Facebook and Twitter as well, just at Stanford Rivals. So if you go to cardinalsportsreport.com and click on any article, it's all there at the bottom. So
awesome. Really appreciate your time, Ben. Are you going to be there Friday night? Will I get to shake your hand in the press box?
Yes, you will, Melissa.
Cool.
I'll be there.
Cool. Awesome. I look forward to seeing you Friday night. We really appreciate your time. I think this is going to be way more of an entertaining and exciting game than any TCU fan wants, because week 1 is supposed to be chaotic and crazy. So really looking forward to it. You have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you Friday night.
Thank you, Melissa.